Lesson 9.5, factoring binomials. We're going to be factoring x squared plus bx plus c. And let's just get this out of the way at the beginning. Beautiful cityscape picture on this one. Yeah, I got nothing funny to say about it, so I don't know. Maybe there's something funny going on in one of those buildings. I just don't know it. So maybe next time we'll have a little better material to work with. So let's talk about this real quick. Factoring trinomials. So in the past and up until today, you have had two binomials that you've had to multiply together. So first terms, outer terms, inner terms, last terms. Okay, you have had to do that. You take two binomials, multiply it together, you get a trinomial product. Well, today it's asking you to go backwards. It's giving you this. You say, okay, what did I multiply together to get that? So you're working in reverse today. So before we move on to that, let's just discover a little bit on how these numbers came about to begin with. And x squared, that was because we took these two and multiplied it. So, okay, what do you multiply together to get x squared? Would be an x times an x. Let me just put these out here. You had to have multiplied an x times an x. Also, cutting to this back part back here, how did you get a 12? Well, that 12 was because we took 3 times 4. Okay? 3 and a 4. Where did this 7x come in? Well, that was because whenever I took 3 times x and a 4 times x, I got 3x and 4x, and when I add those together, I got that. So really what happens is we multiplied something together to get the last one, and we added something together to get those middle ones. So they were both positive, and that's where that comes in at. So you should be able to, given a trinomial, you should be able to go in reverse and get the numbers that came before it. So let's go down and just see what we can do with this. All right, this one, x squared plus 11x plus 18. Remember, we are multiplying together to get the last one, adding together to get the middle one, and you're just going to be coming up with things. There's not really a method. You don't multiply, divide, whatever. You just, by certain things, you just have to think a little bit. What do you multiply together to get an x squared? Well, this one had to be an x, and obviously this one had to be an x. Again, it has to multiply together to get the last one. So what are your pairs of numbers that can multiply to get 18? 18 and 1, 9 and 2, 6 and 3. But only one of those pairs will also not only multiply to get 18, but will add together to get 11. So you know that 9 and 2 and both of those are positive. So I could put plus 9 and plus 2, or I could have written that in reverse order. I could have put x plus 2 times x plus 9. You would have gotten the same answer. Okay, so multiply together to get the last one, add together to get the middle one. Number 1, at the bottom. Let's practice this a little bit. You know to get an x squared, you had to multiply an x times an x. Multiply together to get 2. Well, you've got 2 and 1 as your only option. Check to make sure that it adds together to get a 3. So plus 2, positive 2, and a positive 1. If you would like to multiply this back out using the FOIL method, x times x is x squared. That would be 1x. 2x, add them together, that's 3x. Your last terms would be a 2. That would be a way of checking it. This one. An a and an a. Multiply together to get 10, add together to get 7. Well, your choices would be 1 and 10 and 2 and 5. Only one of those will add together to get 7. So plus 2 plus 5. Again, I could have wrote plus 5 and plus 2. I could have switched those around. Wouldn't make a difference. Last one. I know that I need a t to start both of them off. It has to multiply together to get 14. 1 and 14, 2 and 7 are my factor pairs. Only one of those pairs are going to add together to get 9, and that would be a 2 and a 7. So that is factoring that trinomial into two binomials. Let's see what we've got on the next page. See where else we can take this. So far we've only dealt with positive numbers. So on the next page, whenever we get there, we're going to be talking about negative numbers. Okay. All right. Factor n squared minus 6n plus 8. Again, has to multiply together to get this one, add together to get this one. So to lead them both off, you know I need an n. Multiply together to get 8. And add together to get a negative 6. So now you need to think, so that one of them's negative, you now have to put negative numbers into the mix. So to multiply together to get 8, I could do 1, 8, 2, 2, 4. But I could also do negative 1 and negative 8, and negative 2 and negative 4. Since it's a multiplication problem, you multiply two negatives, you'd get a positive anyway. So the only thing that's going to add together to get a negative 6 is a negative 2 and a negative 4. So again, now that we've got negatives into the mix here, you've just got just that many more factor pairs that you need to look at. So let's go down and see what else we got done here. Let's try some more. Y squared plus 2y minus 15. Y squared plus 2y minus 15. I need a y. I need a y. Multiply together to get a negative 15. One of them has to be negative. That's the only way you're going to get a negative product. One of them has to be negative, one of them has to be positive. Here's what you should be thinking. It should be adding together to get a positive number, so that right there should tell you your positive number has to be bigger than the negative. Because when you add them together, it's positive. So your positive should be bigger. Plus 5 minus 3. That multiplies together to get a negative 15, adds together to get a positive 2. Let's try some examples down here at the bottom. X squared minus 4x plus 3. X, multiply together to get a positive number, but I'm going to have to add together to get negative. That should be your cue to say, okay, if I multiply together to get a negative, both of these are going to, to get a positive, both of those are going to have to be negative. Negative 3 and a negative 1. And they add together to get negative 4. 5. I should start off with a t. Multiply together to get a positive, add to get a negative. Both of them are going to have to be negative. What multiplies together to get that? Negative 6, negative 2. Number 6. Should start off both of them with an m. Multiply to get a negative means one has to be negative, one has to be positive. Doesn't matter which one you put it in. Does not matter. But your bigger one should be positive, right? Because that's a positive one there. And you know that they have to be one apart whenever you subtract them. Well, the only two factor pairs that multiply together to get 20 that are one apart would be 5 and 4. 5 has to be the positive one because that's a positive answer. Last one. W multiply together to get a negative means one has to be negative, one has to be positive. When you add them together, you will get a positive, so it means your positive should be bigger. And it should not only be bigger, but it has to be 6 bigger, so it has to be 6 apart. Okay? So you would need a positive 8 and a negative 2. You just have to think about pairs that would multiply together to get that, and they have to have a difference of that. Okay? Come on. Come on, bunny. Come on, bunny. And there we go. Okay, only other thing we've got left is, of course, they can't just leave it at that. They have to put those polynomial equations in it from the last lesson. So you're going to do the same thing, but you need to solve it. So you need to get it ready. So x squared plus 3x, move that over. Minus 18 equals 0. Now that you have done that, now that you've got it equaling 0, you can factor it just like we have been in all the other ones. You know it needs an x and an x. There's multiplication to a negative, means one has to be positive, one has to be negative. The bigger one has to be positive because it's positive 3 apart. So it would be a positive 6 and a negative 3. Again, those are still equal to 0. So what do we do with the polynomial equations? You set this equal to 0, which means x equals negative 6, and x minus 3 equals 0. So add 3 to both sides, so x is equal to 3. So once you have them to where they are both on the same side, just factor it. Okay, x plus 6, x minus 3, set each one equal to 0, just like our previous lesson, and then you can solve it and find the solution to that. One more example right here on the bottom. S squared minus 2s equals 24. Move this 24 over. S squared minus 2s minus 24 equals 0. Factor. Put an s at the beginning of both. It's going to have to multiply together to get a negative, and it has to be 2 apart. So one has to be plus, one has to be a minus. They have to be 2 different. So let's do 6 and 4. 6 has to be the negative one because it is a sum of a negative 2. Okay? Both of those equal 0. So set them both equal to 0. S plus 4 equals 0. So s is equal to negative 4. And s minus 6 equals 0. 0. So s is equal to 6. Okay? And that should be the end of this lesson. As always, come see me if you have questions.